Today marks exactly 46 years since Black Consciousness Movement leader Steve Biko was laid to rest after his brutal murder at the hands of the apartheid police. But are his teachings still relevant in a modern-day South Africa? Veli Mbele Kasompisi, the co-founder of Mutapa Afrocentric Dialogue, joins us now for more on this conversation. And Veli, very warm good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And that's the question: how significant, are Biko's teachings in modern society today more than ever?
Yes, thank you so much, Austumi. An important question, right? And I often make the point that to understand the importance of Biko's teachings, right, it is important that we first understand the history of Black people, right? Because that's what he concerned himself with. And that's what, that was his reason for existence. So the question of his relevance also needs to be tied to the very existence of Black people and why it is and what our own purpose is in the world, because that's the thing that really made him tick, right? Now, you must also then understand, if you understand the history of Black people, what we have gone through and what we continue to go through, right, in terms of racism, colonialism, and slavery, right? Biko was a person who concerned himself with that, what we refer to as the Black condition, right? Now, if you look where Black people find themselves today, 46 years, as you've correctly said, after his assassination, and today would have been his funeral, in 1977, you continue to see that Black people continue to have what I describe as a slave existence, although in glorified form, right? Economically, culturally, and even politically, if you just look at it globally. And for that reason, Steve Biko and his ideas continue to be absolutely relevant. And I sometimes even use the metaphor, Steve Biko is as important to Black people as oxygen is to the human body.
I mean, as under the same breath that, the times of 1977 or 1976 are different from 2023, still you say Black enslavement still exists. Take me through what you think informs that. What exactly informs that enslavement? What exactly is happening in society that you witness?
I mean, a simple but not an obvious example, right? Just yesterday, as part of the Heritage Day celebrations in Mpumalanga, now in a place called Inzalo, a group of Black people went there as part of the celebrations of the African New Year, right? And they found themselves harassed and almost evicted, right? Now, the point is not even the issue of the laws or whether or not they got permission, but the point that one is making here is that in 2023, right, you find Black people in their own country wanting to express their spirituality, and they still find themselves harassed, right? So those are the many examples. And you look at the many other examples as well. I mean, I often cite the example of the report of the World Bank just a few months ago, which states that in South Africa, right, over 2 decades later, over 80% of the strategic economic assets are in the hands of less than 10% of the population that is white, right? Now, Biko wrote about this over 40 years ago, and that type of slave and master economic relation still persists today, right? And this is why I said we must understand Biko in relation to the material circumstances of Black people, that of slavery, which persists today, albeit in glorified forms.
With also that being said, Veli, I want to also talk about Black consciousness as an ideology. We know that, Steve Biko is quite respected globally for his writings around the Black family. He really was concerned about Black unity and the Black family, also speaking about, the coloredness, the colored question, the idea of the Bantustan as well. Do you think Black consciousness as an ideology has either been forgotten or ignored?
Well, it's also important to understand that, Black consciousness, what Black consciousness seeks to do is this, right? And we must not reduce it necessarily to a party political ideology or even a government ideology. This is what Black consciousness seeks to do. Black consciousness seeks to empower Black people who have a history of colonization and denigration. It seeks to empower them with the tools, mental and otherwise, to engage with the world on their own terms, right? To see themselves as self-defined and not as defined by others. So that is much more fundamental than ideology or even government, right? It's a question of the nature of existence. And like I said, if you look at Black consciousness as the totality of the Black experience globally, if you think of George Floyd, if you think of what is happening in Haiti, if you think of what is happening in Papua New Guinea, if you think of what is happening in the DRC, right? All of those conditions that I'm describing show you the necessity for Black consciousness and its relevance, because that's what Black consciousness concerns itself with, changing that type of condition for Black people.
You know, as we talk about Black enslavement, and I suppose before I let you go, what do you think could be some of the recommendations that you could put on the table to get out of Black enslavement? I'm also asking this because I just wonder as well that even with Black enslavement, who are the perpetrators of Black enslavement? Is it just a different race, a different color? Is it not about race politics? Is it more entrenched in personality or characteristics? But moving forward, how would you then recommend, or even Steve Biko perhaps, how would he recommend to get out of that Black enslavement?
The point of departure for Steve Biko and Black consciousness is psychological liberation, right? So the important thing that Black people need to do in order for them to develop in all areas of their lives, whether as a group or as individuals, Black people must not have a falsified sense of self and a falsified sense of reality, right? And a good example is, for instance, our definitions of beauty, progress, or even intellect are still based on European standards, right? Now, if we are to make progress, the first thing that we need to correct is our value system, which means we must define our own standards of beauty, of intellect, of progress, right? So that when we measure success or failure, we do so by our own value standard. As things stand now, when we measure beauty, progress, or intellect, we use European standards, right? And even if those European standards are articulated by Black people, they continue to be European. So the point of departure for everything for Black people is psychological liberation, because that would then put us in a position to be able to develop all other areas of our lives. Without psychological liberation, our lives as Black people are like sitting in a rocking chair, right? You are making motion, but you are going nowhere.
With that being said, Veli Mbele Kasompisi, thank you so much for joining us right here on South Africa Tonight on eNCA. There's, of course, the co-founder of Mutapa Afrocentric Dialogue, speaking about Black consciousness, but also 46 years on after Steve Biko's passing. And, of course, talking about what Black people, particularly Africans, need to do, according to Veli Mbele Kasompisi, to get out of Black enslavement, saying that it starts with the mind, psychological enslavement. That's where, of course, liberation needs to begin.